come over to the dais, sir. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. So, I don't have slides with me.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So good morning to all of you. Good morning. Yeah, Saturday morning is very tough, all right, after spending a complete week at work. But all the same, I'm sure all of you are very motivated to do this learning exercise. So in no way I would try to tell you, I need to make a disclosure that I'm not the expert in PMI, but I'll share what the world is all about and how project management in the current times becomes so critical. I've always had challenges in terms of speaking before lunch, after lunch, but this new challenge of mine today is speaking on a Saturday morning, but let's try to see what best we can do. So the first at the outset, I'd like to congratulate the PMI Pearl City chapter for taking this initiative. Because in the world we live, I think learning becomes something which is extremely important. To me, I keep saying that learning has to be a continuous journey. And we are today in a world where you need not necessarily go to a class to learn. You can learn from anywhere, anytime. But interventions of this type, by having workshops and seminars, by making sure you have these experts coming in, would certainly be some sort of an icing on the cake. But I don't want you to ignore the fact that it's not only just coming to seminars or workshops will make you learning richer. My submission to all of you is that do the learning on a continual basis. That's how the world is all about. So let me move on to what I wanted to talk to you today. And what the topic rightly was pointed out as the project management, an enabler for future-proofing your business. So how does the future of the business look like? What's this future business looking like at this point of time? So let's look at the present before we get to the future. We all live in a world which I keep calling it as the VUCA world. Which is volatile, it is uncertain, it is complex, and it's become ambiguous. In a span of 12 months, the oil prices moved from $100 a barrel down to $50 a barrel. That's the uncertainty that we have. So we never know what's next to us. The senior most diplomat, without naming who it was, had dinner with me on a Wednesday night when Brexit was happening on a Thursday morning. He assured me, heads over heels, saying that, Mohan, nothing would happen to Brexit, we will remain. He said it was only a question of how much would be the gap between remain versus leave. What came out to be was absolute shell-shocking surprise. And we certainly think that everything has become very uncertain. People thought that you need to have large ammunitions, arms, and so on and so forth to go and kill people, acts of terrorism. What happened yesterday morning in Nice was very sad. You didn't need to have guns. You need to have bombs. As what happened in Dallas, there was one single shooter who shot 32 people, but he was a trained army professional, had magazines of power with him. Yesterday was a high school dropout, unhappy with life, takes his truck, kills 84 people. So the world today is all very uncertain. And one reason to me why it becomes the VUCA world is all being driven by the digital disruption. We're all digitally connected. Online today, you can watch what's happening all around the world. You extrapolate thereafter into your businesses, the same thing holds good. So where is the start point for this digital disruption? If you look at it, if you analyze it, you will find that today the ability to collect data has become very inexpensive. Where was the data being collected from? Is connected from sensors. When Simon Cray did computers, at that point of time, resistors, capacitors, etc., used to cost somewhere in the range of $10 a piece. For $10 now, you can get 1 million sensors. So therefore, collection of data has become easy for us. Thereafter, it's not just collection of data. The next step is that you have to have connectivity. And connectivity is really moving at an extremely rapid pace, exponential to me. In a country like India, if truly the Digital India initiative becomes true, we will have 600,000 villages connected. We'll have 200,000 common community centers also connected together, which means literally 1.2 billion people in this country will all have information at their fingertips. So it's the sensor, it's the connectivity. And a third thing that came along with it is the computing capability. Computing capability defies Moore's law. Gordon Moore in 1970s said the power of computing will double itself for every 18 months. If you go back and strictly now look at and interpolate how the computing power changed over a period of last 40 years, it didn't take 18 months to double itself. It's taking less than 18 months to double itself. And then you of course have very low cost storage. We do an application for an aircraft company, aircraft engine manufacturing company, and it's an application for data collection. We'll come to the application a little while from now. This is basically to do with an aircraft engine health monitoring system. We monitor the health of an aircraft engine when it's flying between the 30,000 to 45,000 feet above the mean sea level. Every 1 minute, it puts out 2 gigabytes of data. On a 12-hour long-haul flight, it puts in about 2 teraflops of data. Was it doable in the past? It wasn't. Is it possible now? Certainly, yes, it's a reality. Why? Because storage has become very inexpensive. So the first layer that we see in terms of what's happening today in the world is that sensing is feasible, storage has become inexpensive, connectivity has become a common thread, and finally what we are finding is there's proper interfaces to make sure that we can communicate well with the data that is stored. So why is the world changing today is because, and the future will change much more. Change is, I keep saying, is a constant. If you look at the civilizations in mankind, all along, change was one thing which was constant. Look at the Stone Age. Mankind moved thereafter into the Steel Age. Steel Age then brought them on to the first industrial revolution, and then the second industrial revolution, and then the ICT-led third industrial revolution. So all of them had a constant called change. And all of them, when the change came in, the general standards of living of mankind went up, comforts went up, economies prospered. So our hope is this time about also the change will do the same. But the change coming about this time, the change that's coming about this time has 2 other major components to it. Number one is velocity of change has increased considerably. And the second one is we also believe that the predictability of change has come down. That goes back to my original theme which says we live in this VUCA world. So you now have, if you look at the future of your businesses, they're all digital and certainly in an environment which is not as it was in the past. So what does this mean to all of us? It means several things. One is that we see that the customer is looking for a different experience. The customer is not the same as what he was in the past. Look at a fairly simple app. I belong to a generation, I no hesitation in admitting it, where I started my career writing programs in autocoder programming. So how many of you have known about a language called autocoder? I'm so delighted. So none of you were even probably born when autocoder was there in this world. That old I am. I feel very good about it, all right? But so that was the time when people wrote an autocoder program, or even leave autocoder, get down to something more familiar with you called COBOL programming. I'm sure COBOL isn't, or you were born after COBOL too. Yeah, yes? Good, good for you, I'm sure. But then, you look at the transition of this world that happened with one language to the other language, or how the applications thereafter morphed themselves. So what was the computer used for? Was point of sale was the key application that they had. If you had a point of sale application, what was the trader doing at the end of the day? He counted how much a product went out and how much of cash came in. Oh, great application for a computer. He thought this was the end of it. Then you saw a major shift, which was very transformational. So what happened within a store was that the trader wanted to make sure that he had an inventory of what's happening. And if he sold too much of a product and the inventory went below a certain level, it automatically had to trigger a supply chain action so that he could reorder the product. He could then also negotiate based on the volume discounts that he has to get. And not only the cash came out, but it also got transferred into the bank and so on and so forth. It got linked into financial accounting. So financial accounting, inventory, thereafter who worked for how long, payroll, that was the transformation that we saw. You look at the digital world today. In retail, I'll give you one of those new applications which certainly was mind-boggling to me. Somebody walks into Saks Fifth Avenue in the 5th Street of New York, and the computer, the camera, and then the computer behind it is recognizing who is walking into the store based on face recognition. Today, laws will not permit people to say that you are walking into the store, but they can always still say that your profile is walking into the store. Your profile would mean, what's your age group that you belong to, how much money that you would spend, what your preferences are in terms of clothing, what colors you like. That's the type of profiling that they can do. And what they do at this point of time, once they profile you, they go and auction your profile to 10 different vendors who have stores in that particular building. And all this happens in 2 seconds. That's the time that's given. And once the guy who picks up your profile in the auction, he knows you're there, he starts now working with you directly on your mobile phone, on your smartphone. He sends an advertisement to you saying that he has got suits of 36 size on sale on in a rack which is on the 4th floor, and which location in the 4th floor. So look at the transformation that has happened. So therefore, and one way we can say who made this customer the way in which it is, it's the complete ecosystem which makes it. You did not make it, I did not make it. But we are into that system where the customer experience is completely different. And it will be much more different. I have a 5-year-old granddaughter. 2 years back, I saw her, that she was trying to go, she was running around in the house. She goes to the TV and tries to pinch it because she saw me pinching on the iPhone. She thinks the same thing could be done. You can enlarge the same thing. What is that? It's the environment which is making them so different than what they were in the past. So the digital world will create an environment for us which is going to be, the customer experience is going to be far different from what it has been so far. We also need to change our operational processes. Our operational processes are not any longer going to be very analog. Nobody came and gave us documents to say, type these documents and then give me results. Nobody is now talking about call centers being answered by human beings on the other side. Process digitization has come to a level where we need to have more amount of automation. There's more amount of automated processes that will get into your process to ensure that the processes are different from what they were in the past. And finally, if you look at it, the third part of it is that the business models also will change. The customer, no longer that you want your application to be on your server, it's going to be on the cloud. You can do pay-per usage. Was it possible in the past? No. It's because of the digital connectivity that's there. Was it possible to have server farms in the past? No, it's because of the optical fiber cable connectivity. You can have your farm anywhere in the world. I sit in somewhere just back in the last 72 hours back from US. Even today, where I am in my life, it amazes me. I type for some specific information on a server which is resident in Madhapur in our facility, and a fraction of a second, the data is back on my machine when I'm sitting in a restaurant in San Francisco. So therefore, this digital world is changing our lives. The future is going to be digital, and this digital is different from what we have done so far. Let's look at what happens as the enablers which are coming in this digital world now. New technologies further are bringing in more amount of disruption. It is the digital world which created the social media. Without connectivity, social is not relevant, was not feasible, was not something which could have ever existed. So also, you look at whether the Facebooks or the Twitters of the world is one set of things that we can talk about. But the other way around of looking at it is also because of the computing power that I talked. Artificial intelligence is now the order of the day. There will be more amount of automation that will come into systems than any one of us would like. I might not also like it as much as many of you do, but that is a necessity of our life. So therefore, we'll get surrendered by a number of enablers which are like I said, social media, or it is artificial intelligence, or the other one is robotics. Drones, robotics of two different types, bots and robotics. Bots are the ones which don't have physical form. They're all now running on top of your machines. So the world now becomes a lot more complex. And before I get to the complexity a little more further, is that now you will see that there are two more new dimensions that have come to you as project managers. What are the two new other dimensions that have come is the skill set requirements are constantly changing. In the past, my manpower requisition just had one particular word called I need C++ programmers, I need Java programmers with 5 years of experience. It isn't any longer the same. Given the change in technologies, given the disruptive nature that's there with technologies, we certainly see that the requirement in terms of skills is far different. And as a result of that, your project management is far different from what it was in the past. You can't be doing the same as what you did in the past, saying that I'll just have those people and do it. No. So how do you handle this challenge is you need to reskill them. And if you need to reskill them, the only way that it's not going to be a classroom reskilling. As I said very initially in my remarks, learning has to be a continuous process. And the technology today, the digital technology again helps you in terms of making sure that you can learn from anywhere, anytime. So the new dimension that we have is skill mix is far different. However much we say last year, NASSCOM projected that we'll do 12.5% growth on the whole industry. We went to a number called $160 billion. The incremental growth was somewhere in the range of about $15 to $18 billion. We claimed that we had 250,000 engineers who would be added into the system. But truly, we didn't have 250,000 engineers who added into the system. It was less than 200,000. This year, our prediction will be to be less than 150,000 people who will be added into the system. Not only the number of people who are added into the system is different, but equally important is the skill requirement is changing dramatically. But nothing to get very worried about, because you could always reskill yourself. So therefore, in this environment which is changing, it is extremely dramatic and challenging. But in challenges, I keep saying that there are opportunities that emerge to people. Take a good example of, I'm sure a number of people said they didn't know many things that I know of, is, did you hear about a company called Kodak? Lift your hands, how many people used Kodak film? Oh, that's good, that's impressive now. So which means that Kodak lived for longer than I anticipated it to be. So look at the story of Kodak. What was it? It was a 100-plus-year-old company, and a company which originally